Hello, my name is Becky Frank, and I'm making this recording for Excelsior classes. Today, I would like to tell you the story of Sacagawea, an amazing moment in American history. Sacagawea was a teenager when she traveled west with the Corps of Discovery. Her presence on the journey provided to be invaluable time and time again. She served as a translator, a guide, and ambassador of goodwill. And how this teenage girl became part of the greatest adventure in American history is truly an amazing story. Sacagawea was born in 1788, 1789. She was part of the Lemhi Band of the Shoshone Indians. She grew up in what is now Idaho. She was kidnapped in about 1800 by the Hadassah Indians and taken to the Mandan village in what is now North Dakota. In 1803 or 1804, she became the property of Toussaint Charbonneau, either through purchase or trade or as a result of a bet, and he made her his second wife. In 1803, the United States purchased the Louisiana Territory from France. When we did that, we got 828,000 acres of previously unexplored land. We didn't know what we were buying. We hoped that the Northwest Passage was there. That would be a water route that took us through North America rather than having to sail around it. We had been looking for the Northwest Passage for several hundred years and had not found it, primarily because it did not exist, but there was hope. Thomas Jefferson was already making plans to explore this territory before we even purchased it. He had prepared his young secretary, Meriwether Lewis, for the job by sending him to Philadelphia where he could get training on how to make maps and identify plants and animals. Meriwether Lewis will be joined by William Clark, and together the two men will lead the Corps of Discovery, an Army unit that was specifically formed to map and document what was in the northern part of the Louisiana Territory. The Corps of Discovery arrived in what is now North Dakota in November 1804. They built a camp for the winter, Fort Mandan, and their plan had been to hire guides and interpreters when they got there. They knew they needed to negotiate with the Shoshone Indians for the sale of horses that would take them over the mountains. Charbonneau was hired as a guide and translator, and his young wife, Sacagawea, came along as part of the bargain. We had one member of the Corps that spoke French. His name was Francois Labrèche. Everyone else only spoke English. But Charbonneau spoke French, so he could communicate with Francois, who could communicate with the captains in English. Sacagawea spoke Hadassah and Shoshone. She and her husband could communicate in Hadassah. And so through this train of translators, they were hoping to be able to negotiate some sort of deal with the Shoshone Indians. Before they take off, though, in February of 1805, Sacagawea gives birth to her son, Jean-Baptiste. Meriwether Lewis serves as a midwife. He will go with her. So she is not only a 16-year-old girl traveling across the country, but doing so while taking care of her infant son. The Corps of Discovery, including Sacagawea and Jean-Baptiste, leave in April 1805 and head west to explore the rest of Louisiana. Sacagawea serves as a symbol of peace. Like I said, she went with her infant child. Men do not wage war with a woman and an infant with them, so groups seeing the Corps of Discovery approach are going to be a little bit more welcoming than they might have been otherwise because they know that it's a peaceful mission. Many times she gathers roots and plants and berries that are used both for food by the Corps of Discovery as well as for medicine, supplementing their diet, sometimes providing what they eat for that day. In May of 1805, the boat that her husband was piloting capsized, and she remained calm and thinking quickly, managed to gather up equipment and supplies and records that might have otherwise been lost to the river. Her calm demeanor in the face of this almost calamitous event gained her respect of a lot of the members of the Corps. She hadn't already done so. And like I said, she was able to translate Shoshone. In When she reached the Shoshone people, they set up the line of translators. Sacagawea in mid-sentence stopped. She had been away from her people for a long time, and she realized almost mid-sentence that the person she was talking to, the chief of this band of Shoshone Indians, was her brother Camelweight. And so she stopped and ran up and hugged him and embraced, and they had their reunion. She was relieved to see her family, had not heard from them since she had been kidnapped. Camelweight had no idea what had happened to his sister, and so he was very relieved. After the reunion, the negotiations continued, and the captains were able to get the horses that they needed for the rest of their trip. Now, we don't know for sure that they wouldn't have gotten the horses without Sacagawea's presence or without a Shoshone guide, but they might not have gotten them for the deal which they did or the number of horses which they needed to carry both the men and the supplies over the mountains. Once the Corps of Discovery reached the Pacific coast, Sacagawea and Clark's slave York were both allowed to vote on where the fort would be located for the winter. It's the first recorded vote by either a woman or a slave in American history. They spent the winter there in Oregon and then returned home in the spring. Sacagawea, Charbonneau, and baby Jean-Baptiste were left off at the Mandan village on their way back. Charbonneau was paid $500.33, as well as granted 360 acres of land for his service. Sacagawea herself was not compensated at all, and this was not unusual. Women in many cases could not own property, especially a Native American woman, and so her compensation, had there been any, would have been given to Charbonneau anyway. So they kind of got a 2-for-1 deal there. Apart from not finding the Northwest Passage, the Corps of Discovery's mission was accomplished. They mapped the northern portion of the Louisiana Purchase. They discovered 112 new animals, 117 new plants, and documented the lifestyle of many Native American groups. This might not have happened if Sacagawea had not been there to supplement their diet, to save the supplies and equipment from the river, or to converse with the Shoshone. We have no idea how many times her presence alone prevented a military confrontation between the Corps and the groups of Indians that they encountered. It's believed that Sacagawea died in 1812. 8 months after her recorded death, William Clark becomes the custodian of her children. He will later adopt them. She had a daughter, Lizette, who is believed not to have survived childhood, but her son, Jean-Baptiste, will be very well educated. He will become a guide in the West after he reaches adulthood, after being educated in Europe. He is fluent in English, French, German, Spanish, and many native languages, so he has quite a bit to contribute to the settling of the West in the 1840s. I hope you enjoyed this amazing moment in American history. For more amazing moments, check out my classes at excelsiorclasses.com. I thank you for stopping by.